Welcome to Buffalo Rumblings Live. My name is Matt Warren. I was supposed to be joined tonight by Brian Galliford, our editor-in-chief, but he's having some health problems tonight, nothing to be too worried about, but he had to go home sick today, and so he's out of our Buffalo Rumblings Live tonight, which is sad because it's our first kind of regular season Buffalo Rumblings Live hangout. So I'm going to be flying solo for the first 10 to 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to welcome in one of our writers from Windy City Gridiron, our brother site from SB Nation, Steven Schweikert, who's going to be joining us in a little bit to talk about the Bears and things like that. So Brian's cats didn't overthrow him and stage a coup or anything like that. We just have to make sure that we send some positive vibes his way as he gets over this illness that he's dealing with. So we promised you we'd talk about the Bills' 53-man roster. We promised you we'd talk about roster cuts, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So you can keep throwing your comments into the comment section at buffalorumblings.com. Let's start with the biggest kind of elephant in the room, and it's Kyle Orton, which is interesting because it's Bears week. Anyway, Kyle Orton signs with the Bills after the final preseason game, after all of training camp, and people immediately start to ask questions about why it didn't happen sooner. Orton was asked himself at the press conference he gave on Monday, and he said, well, anyone who has kids understands. So, I mean, it's kind of a wink-wink. Kyle Orton said, I pretty much knew I could go away for all summer, hang out with my kids, and then come back and do what I needed to do. And that's exactly what he did. He steps into what was the largest salary for a backup quarterback until Matt Schaub got demoted out in Oakland. He steps into a great situation where he has no expectations. The old saying goes, the most popular player in town is the backup quarterback. And that's exactly what he's going to be dealing with. People are going to be clamoring for him if EJ does falter at all this season. And then if he comes in and stinks up the joint, well, I was only here for a week before the season. What did you expect from me? So Kyle Orton steps into the backup role. They were able to keep Jeff Toole around on the practice squad for now. And last I heard, Thad Lewis hadn't signed anywhere. I did see he had a tryout with the Eagles and things like that. But Thad Lewis really is the linchpin in that entire conversation. It was at OTAs that we started to hear some rumblings, pun intended, about Thad Lewis not being the guy that they saw in 2013 when he went 2-3 and beat the Dolphins twice and was able to come in and lift this team up really last year and put them on his back. He was inconsistent, and they immediately started to try and sign someone else. Eventually that led to Kyle Orton signing in August, believe it or not, and it really comes down to Thad just not showing up to OTAs with what the coaches thought he was going to. It stinks for Thad because a lot of people, including the Bills coaches, thought he was going to be that guy. You guys and your cat pictures and all that stuff on Brian. We like to make fun of Brian for cat stuff. If this is your first time watching our program, Buffalo Rumblings Live. So at the quarterback position, EJ Manuel, we can talk about him for a little while too. He was never not going to be the guy going into the season. He has 10 NFL games of starting experience, and so the Bills were always going to go with him to start the season. And it also is the reason that he's not the captain of this team. He has 10 NFL starts. The youngest captain that they picked was, I think, Brandon Spikes at age 27. They picked guys with lots of playing experience, lots of success, lots of individual success in some cases, and team success in others. But they picked well-respected guys in the leader room that can be more vocal, and I don't think E.J. Manuel has that type of clout. And so this whole hullabaloo over the captaincy, and they picked 6 captains, and EJ wasn't one of them. I literally could not care less about that. As for EJ Manuel heading into the season, some people, especially national media folks, have been throwing out the bye week that's coming up in just over a month, and week 4 kind of being that make or break time for Manuel. And please don't get me wrong, I think the fan sentiment would be overwhelmingly against EJ Manuel if he comes out and has 1 or 2 bad games in the next month. But at the bye week, he's going to have 14 NFL starts, not even a full NFL season. And while Coach Marone might be tempted to pull the plug, if he has any hope of saving his job, it's probably not on the arm of Kyle Orton. It's probably by E.J. Manuel developing into a solid quarterback. Joe Buscaglia on WGR 550 this afternoon gave it to week 13 or somewhere in that vicinity where Kyle Orton might be able to come in and salvage the end of the season. That's, of course, also against the 4 toughest teams on their schedule, or 4 of the toughest games on their schedule. They're at Denver and New England in that stretch. I can't remember. I think Green Bay is one of the other teams in that stretch. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But expecting anybody other than E.J. Manuel to come in and do that it's just hard to even imagine that. But that goes back to the conversation we had before. Kyle Orton can come in and pretty much be the most popular guy on the team until he comes in and plays, and then if he doesn't do any better, it's kind of back to square one. Manuel's the guy they hitched their wagon to at the beginning of the year, and I think that's where it's got to start and go for at least an extended period of time. So when Montel in our comment section asks, do you think E.J. Manuel is now on a short leash? No, I don't think that. I think it's not like they're going to give him a half of football and then they're going to pull him and put Kyle Orton in halfway through this game against the Bears. They're not going to put him in at least until that bye week, if not further after that. So there's my quarterback rant. I've been kind of saving that up for our Buffalo Rumblings live here, just because I see a lot of people questioning Manuel, and I don't have any answers on Manuel, but that's really the point I'm trying to make, is that nobody has answers on Manuel, especially with just the vanilla offense we saw in this offseason. Doug Marone won't allow cameras at training camp, won't allow cameras inside their practices. He doesn't like to show anything. So if you go based off of that, you can pretty much assume that they didn't show anything on offense in the preseason. So what does Kyle Orton represent to the Bills? I think it really boils down to insurance. If E.J. Manuel gets hurt, Kyle Orton's going to be better than Thad Lewis and Jeff Toole. I don't think that they signed him to come in and start in the next month. I don't think they came in with the hope that he'll end up starting. I think they brought him in as an insurance policy. There, boom, quarterbacks, done. On offense and defense, there weren't a ton of surprising cuts. Jeff Toole might be a surprising cut, but he was turned right around and signed to the practice squad. On the defensive side of the ball, the Bills bypassed Landon Cohen, which a lot of people asked about, and it was one of the questions I wanted to get to from our readers. Hold on, let me pull it up. Where are you? Okay, it's from Mike $Bills. Can you address early when it comes to roster cutdowns why Landon Cohen was cut? Brian Galliford actually said it on his observations from the 53-man roster on Sunday, that the Bills, like any team should, kept the defensive end, in this case Jackie Smith, instead of the defensive tackle. They've got 4 defensive tackles that they can comfortably roll in there, but they needed someone who could be a better edge rusher in case they needed one of those. And if they really need it, Jarius, too many years of Jarris Bird, by the way, Jarius Wynn can knock down inside and play some defensive tackle in a pinch. So they had positional versatility. They wanted a pass rusher, so that's why Landon Cohen was cut in favor of some of the other guys on the defense. I know that some people were really upset when Cohen got cut because he was a preseason superstar, but he has been for a lot of different teams and still not stuck for a lot of similar reasons. So that was a good question, and probably the most surprising roster cut on the offensive defensive side of the ball. And then we get to the specialists. So what the heck happened with the specialists? Well, the first thing that the team did was they went out and they claimed Jordan Gay from the Carolina Panthers. He is going to end up being their kickoff specialist. And the Bills actually announced this today when they released their depth chart for the 2014 season. He's going to be their kickoff specialist. He's got pretty much a one-game audition to prove that he should belong on the roster before Nigel Bradham comes back from his suspension. Okay, then they've got they gave a contract extension, to Garrison Sanborn. He's obviously the best player on the team as far as fulfilling his role on the team. Knock on wood, he hasn't had any bad snaps in his entire career. This is going to take him well past his 30th birthday, and he's just solid at what he does, and that's what you want to reward. Dan Carpenter is still entrenched at the kicker spot, and then part about this job is that there's so much roster turnover. I got to pull up his name because it just sounded okay. Here we go. Colton Schmidt. That's a name right there for you. It's a solid name. Colton Schmidt, newly signed from the or actually newly claimed off waivers from the San Francisco 49ers, is going to be their punter at least in week 1. And as Brian also explained on Sunday, it just shows that the Bills are willing to have a lot of turnover on their specialists in order to get somebody that works, somebody that's going to do what he's supposed to do day in and day out. And if that guy doesn't do it, well, they'll just cut him and find someone else. Kush to Push is asking why I didn't talk about TJ Graham. The writing was on the wall, buddy. I'm sorry. TJ Graham was picked up by the Titans. You can go watch him there with their awesome offense. Montel asks, in your opinion, if Darius is given time off during the season, do you think Cohen would be recalled? Possibly. It depends on how long Darius' suspension is. If it is for 4 games or 5 games, they'll need another body on the defensive line probably. And in that case, they could give him a call. He's still available now as far as I know. And so it should be able to bring it home as far as that goes. All right, just quick scanning a couple of the other questions. Most of them are for the Bears stuff, so we're going to bring in Steven here in a second. The last thing I wanted to break down was the depth chart. The Bills released their depth chart today, and Robert Woods, shocker of shockers, was listed ahead of Mike Williams and Chris Hogan. One of the running storylines from our preseason was, why the heck is Robert Woods running with the second team? Why is he running behind Chris Hogan? Why is he running behind Mike Williams? Well, it turns out he wasn't. Well, he was in the preseason, but he wasn't in the hearts and minds of the coaches. So he's going to be the first team wide receiver. He's probably going to get the number of snaps we expected him to all along. Whatever it was, Coach Marone lighting a fire under his butt, trying to motivate him. He's listed at the top of the depth chart now, and so should see a pretty good number of snaps this Sunday and every Sunday, especially if Sammy Watkins is injured, which we still don't know how much he's going to play, how effective he'll be going over the middle, taking shots from that Bears defense. And then the other interesting note from the roster depth chart that was released today is C.J. Spiller is listed as a top kick returner, which SB Nation NFL retweeted us and said, well, that's exciting, and it could be if he ever gets a chance to return a kick, which is a different story. But it's interesting to note that they put Spiller there, and he did return a couple kicks in the preseason, so we kind of saw it coming. But he's going into a contract year. He needs to show his versatility, I guess. We'll see. I hope he doesn't get hurt there. With that, we're going to welcome in Steven Schweikert from Windy City Gridiron. Steven, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, Matt. Thanks for having me. Just real quick, you mentioned Landon Cohen being cut. All that you really have to know about Landon Cohen, he shows up well in the preseason, and he was a starter at defensive tackle last year for that Bears defense that was just abysmal against the run. So cutting Landon Cohen, I have to give you a thumbs up on that one.
All right, well, thanks for that. Windy City Gridiron is our Chicago Bears blog. You can read Steven's stuff over there and a bunch of other great stuff. I know Dane Noble, their editor-in-chief, has answered some questions for us that will pop off a little bit later this week on BuffaloRumblings.com as we get ready for the Bills versus the Bears. So let's just talk about a couple of the key storylines. Jay Cutler's going into his second year of Mark Trestman's offense. Now, Mark Trestman should be familiar to really devout Bills fans. He was the quarterback's coach a few years ago before going and taking a head coaching job in Canada in the CFL, and then he eventually found his way to the Bears from that head coaching job, which was a very interesting hire at the time, and I applauded it at the time because I think Trestman's a good coach. It doesn't really matter where you coach. He reminds me a lot of actually Marv Levy in that regard, that he kind of bounced around a little bit, including the CFL, and then made his way back to being a head coach in the NFL. Is this the year that Jay Cutler finally breaks out in Mark Trestman's offense?
Well, it's been an annual question since Cutler has been in Chicago. He's got near unlimited potential with that just absolute cannon of an arm that he has, and the ability, to get around and evade trouble. But he's had a lot of problems since he's been a Bear. When he first came here, he was throwing to Devin Hester and Johnny Knox. He had an offensive line that had Jamarcus Webb featured at left tackle for quite a while. That hadn't exactly worked out as well. His main weapon was Matt Forte. That's pretty much it. But now he's got an offensive-minded head coach in Trestman. He's got Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, who just might be the best wide receiving duo in the NFL. And he's got an offensive line that isn't bad. It might be north of average, but it's some of the best protection that he's had since he's been in Chicago. So it just comes to, does everything come together? The last time that he had the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back years was when Mike Martz was in town, and in that second year, he was putting up Pro Bowl numbers before he got hurt. Even last year, he was putting up some Pro Bowl numbers before Josh McCown, came in. And when we know what McCown did and where he is now, he's with former Bears head coach Lovie Smith in Tampa. And if there was one thing that Lovie's offenses did, it was sputter. But that's neither here nor there.
So what do we have to worry about on offense? Is the Bills come in with a pretty stout defensive line and some suspect linebacker play, and then some pretty green folks in the secondary?
Well, your biggest worries are, of course, Marshall and Jeffrey down the field. They're both very big targets. The Bears have a lot of big targets, especially when you throw in Martellus Bennett in there. You got a lot of big guys on that receiving core that catch the ball, go up for a ball. Marshall's a very solid route runner, can get open easily. Jeffrey can get open easily. Matt Forte can really create some problems receiving out of the backfield. Then I said they don't really have a number two tight end as far as a combo target, receiving and blocking. They're kind of hoping that Dante Rosario is going to be that, but that's about fourth or fifth down the receiving priority. So you've got a lot of weapons that you do have to worry about. So Buffalo's defensive priority is going to be getting to Cutler, reducing the amount of time he has to make those throws.
So you did mention the tight end. It's Martellus Bennett, right?
Yes.
And we heard his name early in the preseason, but we haven't really been following it because when it's not a national story, we don't follow the ending of it, I guess. Whatever happened with that whole incident where he was kind of suspended and stuff like that?
Well, he was suspended for the first preseason game, and then after that, it just kind of faded away. That's the thing about a lot of these, preseason issues, I guess you can call them. Mm-hmm. They flare up, they're handled, and then there really hasn't been anything since. He was never in danger of losing his job. He's the best tight end the Bears have. He's definitely the incumbent starter. You don't have any real competition immediately behind him. So it just kind of fizzled out.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Whoa, my screen jumped. Hold on a second. I had the next thing lined up. So a couple of you. Let me back up that question again. What's the word on some of the injuries that the Bears have been dealing with, specifically on the offensive side of the ball with Jordan Mills and Marquess Wilson?
Well, Jordan Mills has a bit of a foot thing. He started camp just fine, but then re-injured his foot a little bit. He broke his foot actually in the regular season finale last year against Green Bay, a game that I'm sure is going to come up when we get to the safeties later. but uh, but yeah, Mills kind of re-injured his foot a little bit in camp, so he's been resting it quite frequently. The Bears have been starting Michael Ola there in the preseason, so. If that continues on for another week, then you'll get a look at a guy that the Bears made it a priority to acquire when he became available. I believe Miami let him go. But yeah, they made it a priority to go after Ola, and well, they like him enough that he's their sixth offensive lineman,
Right.
and right there behind Mills. Going to Marquez Wilson. News broke today that he was placed on injury reserve with the designation to return. This puts him out until after the Bears bye week. Uh, so right now the Bears have five healthy wide receivers, uh, Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, and then behind them you've got the recent acquisition Santonio Holmes, Josh Morgan played his way up into a spot, and Michael Spurlock, who is going to be a return man in some capacity for the team. So Wilson's injury hurts a little bit. He was a guy that the Bears were really counting on to make strides, and by all reports, he had made those strides. But when you break your clavicle, I believe it was three separate breaks in that clavicle when he landed, that kind of throws a wrench in your development plans. So yeah,
A
he's
little
out until
bit.
the bye week.
A little bit. What else do we need to know about the offense? Are they going to kill us with the run or the pass?
Uh, well, they're going to pass. They're going to pass a lot. And they're going to use the pass to set up the run. Now, in the preseason, they had a really hard time running the ball. Uh, whether that's because Roberto Garza, the team's starting center, is starting to get up there, not able to uh, make his run blocks all that more effectively, or if Forte was struggling a little bit, that's a little doubtful, I suppose. But uh, it could be nothing to worry about. It could be something to worry about. It's just one of those questions that we're just going to have to answer in week one. But ultimately, your bigger threat on offense is going to be the passing offense, especially with all the big targets that they have and the extra year in the system. So that'd be your priority.
The Bears defense has gone over a pretty big overhaul this offseason. Can you start with the defensive line and just kind of tell us what changes they've made in order to get better and what kind of areas they were targeting, run defense, pass defense, getting to the pass, or whatever it might be?
Well, I'm a big believer in starting with the trenches, so sure, we'll start right there.
Okay.
Their main priorities uh, were, well, of course, addressing the defensive line. It was a unit that was just absolutely miserable last year. Uh, I can't even sugarcoat it. It was some really bad play all around. But they decided to address it with some extreme turnover. When Phil Emery, the Bears general manager, finds an area that needs improvement, he attacks it full force. Uh, so with the defensive line this year, that involved a second-round draft pick in Ego Ferguson and a third-round draft pick in Will Sutton, both defensive tackles. So they're going to be developing behind fourth-year player Stephen Paya and last year's acquisition Jeremiah Ratliff. So right there's three defensive tackles that didn't start the year on the Bears roster last year. At defensive end, the Bears really prioritized it in free agency with three key additions. They started out by picking up Lamar Houston and Willie Young, and later on in free agency went and picked up Jared Allen, who that's pretty decent middle to late free agency pickup. So they're really hoping that the new defensive line is going to get some more pressure on the quarterback and especially stop the run. Lamar Houston does have that ability to kick inside and play three tech in some of those nickel/pass rush situations, and he's a very stout run defender. Uh, so right there, you're really looking for some main improvement.
So
You'll have a question.
okay, that's fine. No, so moving backward towards the linebacker and the safeties, what have they done there to kind of shore up the holes that they had in those positions?
Well, I'm going to start with the linebackers first. Most of those changes had taken place last year, and then linebacker turned out to be a kind of poor performing unit. So what they're really counting on in the linebacking core is a lot of development. Last year's second round draft pick John Bostic is projected to at least be a co-starter at the middle linebacker. 2012's first round draft pick Shea McClellan is kicking back from defensive end into the full time Sam linebacker. So right there, you've got a guy that struggled at linebacker in Bostic, and a guy that struggled at defensive end, to say the least. And you're putting him in a position that he occasionally came in at a little bit in in Boise State. I don't know what Baltimore. But yeah, he was occasionally a linebacker, stand-up, rush backer at Boise. You're probably going to see some of the same stuff here in Chicago. But it's really a toss-up as to what you're going to get out of him. His preseason was pretty mixed, but you have to keep in mind he was learning a new position. And then they also have undrafted free agent Christian Jones out of Florida State, who made it as a 6 linebacker special teamer, but he's a guy that if he gets an opportunity, he could see a couple snaps here or there. He's a guy that the Bears wanted to hang on to. If you go further back, they spent their first round draft pick this year on Kyle Fuller, and what they're going to do with him is in nickel packages, instead of bringing him in to play the interior nickelback, they're actually going to kick Tim Jennings inside and have him match up in the slot and have Fuller play on the outside. So they're developing him to eventually potentially replace Charles Tillman, who, if I'm not mistaken, this will be his 12th year or 13th year. But the point is, have to do a little bit of replacement there eventually. And then at safety, the only returning safety there is Chris Conti, who the last defensive snap that he saw in the regular season was a deep pass to Randall Cobb that put the Packers in the playoffs. So,
right, is he hurt?
He suffered a concussion in week 3 of the preseason against Seattle, so it's a little bit up in the air as to where he is. There are reports that he is the team's starting safety, which honestly I'm more than okay with. Why Conti is still around is because he's still under team control, which is good, and the adage that addressing up front, addressing the line, addressing the linebackers, addressing the front makes the back play a lot easier and a lot better. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if we can get 2012 Chris Conti out of the 2014 version here, because the 2012 Chris Conti actually wasn't bad. The 2013 Chris Conti, when he was the safeties last year, Chris Conti and Major Wright were 2nd and 3rd on the team in tackles last year, which that's kind of a danger zone.
Yes. Okay, so if the Bills are going to attack through the air with E.J. Manuel, are they susceptible to the deep ball, or is it the linebackers and coverage we should be focusing on?
You should be attacking the linebackers because they've been biting quite a lot on play action, and there's this nice little window behind the linebackers, but just before the safeties, that intermediate ball there, that the teams were just hitting with regularity in the preseason. So if you guys can just keep on hitting that particular window, and force Mel Tucker to adjust to it, mm-hmm. because everybody wanted to run Mel Tucker out of town last year too. So
well, that space that you remind me of actually reminds me of a very, I don't know. It was when the boos started raining down on E.J. Manuel earlier in the preseason when I can't remember who the intended receiver was. I think it was Woods, right up the seam, and Manuel just didn't put enough on it, or maybe he patted the ball once too long, and the guy underneath was able to recover and actually pick it off and take it back. The Bills like to run a lot of those plays up the seam, and Manuel has made that throw before. It's just hopefully that spot you're talking about over the linebackers and underneath the safety. Hopefully he'll be able to hit some of those in this game for us, not for you, obviously. So,
well, and the other thing there, real quick, if I may, you're talking about a couple of linebackers on the Bears that enjoy that more upfront style. John Bostic is a bit more of a run stopper than he is a coverage guy. Uh, McClellan is definitely more of a pass rusher, really untested in coverage. Uh, so I mean, right there is kind of the Bears' danger window. Uh, as soon as they start recognizing better play action reads, uh, they might be a little bit better in coverage as opposed to biting, getting sucked in a little bit, and then just getting hit right over the top. But
Mhm.
until that happens, team should be looking to have a field day in there.
Do they have a guy that can cover, say, Sammy Watkins or Marquise Goodwin, who've got super fast straight line speed over the top? Some of the things that we've been looking at for this coming week are just kind of these big explosive plays that maybe some guy gets either behind the secondary or gets at least into the secondary and can make a guy miss and then take it to the house. Is that something that they're susceptible to?
Well, if you're talking about defending a speedster, Charles Tillman can cover pretty much anybody. He might not be the most fleet of foot, but he's decent on the jam. So if he gets a decent jam going, he might be able to stop him. Tim Jennings might be able to run with him, but if someone starts getting past him, that's when you might start seeing a safety cheat over the top a little bit. Just to kind of defend a little bit on that. Anybody that can match up directly. I mean, Tim Jennings might be the only one that can run downfield with them.
Okay.
But I mean, a speedster, if you can get the ball down that deep and especially challenge the safeties, you can probably make some decent headway there.
All right, just before I let you get out of here with just a quick breakdown, a two-sentence breakdown at the end, I had a couple quarterbacks I wanted to ask you about. Jay Cutler said that it was, I can't remember his exact wording, but it was unfortunate that the Bills, that he was going to be seeing Jordan Palmer so soon, and it turns out he's not going to be seeing Jordan Palmer. But do you think that Jordan Palmer was able to give the Bills anything worthwhile?
Probably not. I mean, it's one thing to be able to, share signals or share indicators or whatever. But that, and I know it's a phrase that I'm not really all that fond of. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to execution. I mean, you know that the Bears are going to come at you with with big targets, and Cutler's going to air the ball out for them. Just how many times can you stop them? I mean, the offense can be a little bit hit or miss. In the respect of they can have a good drive, but they can also 3 and out just as easily. It just comes down to can you get pressure on Jay? Can you force those incompletions? And can you execute enough to the point where you get more 3 and outs and less sustained drives?
And Jordan Palmer's not going to help with any of that stuff, which I understand.
Yeah.
Different quarterback, Kyle Orton, originally a fourth-round draft pick of the Bears all the way back in 2005. I had also posited this on Twitter that now that Rex Grossman got cut by the Browns, the Bills should sign him and make him the third quarterback, and then we could just have all of the Bears leftovers. What? Kyle Orton and Rex. Well, let's forget Rex Grossman. Kyle Orton. Well, give me just one sentence. It was so long ago that it hardly even matters. But give me one sentence on how you remember the Kyle Orton era in Chicago.
I can probably give you one word: caretaker. They didn't really ask Orton to do a whole lot because the defense was just so good, especially in that rookie year of his. But one thing that I will maintain was that when the Bears made it to the Super Bowl in that immediately following year, they weren't going to make it to the Super Bowl with Kyle Orton as the quarterback. They needed the actual deep threat, of an actual legitimate passing quarterback that a Rex Grossman offered, because Rex Grossman may have his problems, but one thing he did and still does have is a frickin' cannon for an arm.
Okay. And then the last question that one of our readers posted in our Sergeant Major Thor posted in our comment section. Were Bears fans receptive to the initial hiring of Mark Trestman, like right when he was hired? Were they receptive to the guy coming from the CFL?
Well, once everybody woke up, sure.
It was in the middle of the night, right?
Right. Yeah. The weirdest thing about that was that the news broke at 4 a.m. And fortunately, one of our contributors is over in the British Isles, so he was up getting it live for us. The Trestman hire was an extremely interesting one. He was kind of the dark horse candidate because no one knew what to expect out of a head coach out of the Canadian Football League. But one of the keys that a lot of WCG members were looking for was an offensive-minded guy. You went out, you traded an absolute bounty for this quarterback, and you hadn't done much with him. Well, a lot of people wanted, an offensive-minded guy to come in, and maybe you can make a little bit of him. Trestman's got a very solid resume of spinning quarterbacks around, especially Rich Gannon of 2002 Raiders fame. So when you bring in a guy who has that kind of resume, that kind of reputation for being able to turn around a quarterback, and you're pairing him up with a guy who's got a lot of promise, but just hasn't made the most of it, people were a little bit leery because, okay, he's a Canadian football guy. He doesn't know the NFL game, because it's changed, so much over the last few years. But in the end, you have a guy that knows offensive football, and so far has done some pretty solid things with Cutler, and did some really good things with Josh McCown too. So if he didn't win people over immediately with his hiring, he won some people over with the season. Now it just comes down to, can the defense and special teams come along?
And it's pretty much been the exact opposite with Doug Marrone, who has won people over with his defensive hiring and underachieved on the offensive side of the ball. Quickly, before we let you get out of here, I need a 2-sentence breakdown of the Bears. Make it short and sweet. Give me a soundbite.
All right. If the Bears are going to make the playoffs, it'll be because the defense went from abysmal to at least average. I can give you one sentence.
That's good.
How's that?
All right. Well, thank you to Steven Schweikert. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Steven Schweikert from Windy City Gridiron. You can go over there at WindyCityGridiron.com. You can follow them on Twitter at WindyCGridiron because their name is too long, just like ours is, at Buff Rumblings. And why don't you tell our folks how they can follow you this week on Twitter?
Well, on Twitter, you can follow me at SJS_Illini, ILLINI.
Thanks a lot, Steven. And, well, we're probably not going to have you on for a few more years, so I hope you really enjoyed your time on Buffalo Rumblings Live.
It was excellent. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.